All right. Awesome. All right. Welcome to the time management and timekeeping training. My name is Carly. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the program manager for the Civic Leaders AmeriCorps program. So my role really just includes all things that fall under grant and program management, one of which is member training. So I've been with Iowa and Minnesota Campus Compact for about 5 years now, and I am located in Des Moines, Iowa. I do have a couple of my colleagues here with me today, but before they introduce themselves, I'm going to quickly introduce Ryan, who is not on the call today. Ryan serves kind of in a part-time capacity for the CLAP program as the project coordinator, and some of you may have met him in the program launch training that we had in September. So Ryan started as a Vista leader for our organization and then moved into the project coordinator role about a year ago. So that's a little bit about Ryan, and I will pass the mic over to Anya so she can quickly introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anya, pronouns she, her, hers. I'm the project coordinator, so I've been the one who has been sending you guys all those reminder emails, and I will continue to do so. But I also do a lot of the timekeeping, management, and what else are we supposed to say, Carly?
That's good. And
where do you live? Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah.
Where are you located?
I live in St. Paul, Minnesota. So I'm really excited to see you guys in the Civic Action Academy in Iowa in a month.
Awesome. Thank you, Anya. Kayla, you want to jump in real quick?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Kayla Lifetog. I also use she, her, hers pronouns. I am the Assistant Director of Analytics and Member Development at Iowa and Minnesota Campus Compact, and I've been working for the organization full-time for just a little under a year, a little bit part-time for about a year and a half. So just really excited to be here. I also have spent time on a college campus at Coe College, actually, here in Iowa, because I live in Ames, Iowa, right north of Des Moines. But I have supervised AmeriCorps members in the past. And so part of my interest in talking about time management isn't just related to my own personal passion for it. It's also an understanding of how there are there's an added need to think about your time when you're adding something as significant as an AmeriCorps term into your life for the year. And so, there's kind of, we'll get into it in a little bit, but I am, thinking about this from a personal perspective, but also taking the lens of knowing that it's particularly extra to think about when you're also in AmeriCorps. So, hello.
Thank you, Kayla. And for some of our returners that I think we maybe have on the call today, Kayla is probably familiar to you too, because she was on the program launch last year, and so this training will be similar to that one. So some of this information might sound familiar to a couple of you. All right. So we're going to move into group introductions now. So Anya, if you could pause the recording.
Sure.
I was just asking Anya.
Okay. I don't know why that suddenly popped into my brain, but just wanted to make sure that we were recording. But we are all busy, and I have also been kind of a hyper type A person myself, and definitely was in college, and even as a working person and a family person, I love to be busy and have things to do. But I have found some strategies over time that have helped me to manage those things so that I can rest better, that I can enjoy the things I've chosen to do in ways that feel more holistic to me, and I'm better at saying no to things that are really not serving me. So to the extent that my experience can help any of you and my passion in this area, I'm going to talk a little bit about strategy. So you can flip to the next screen. And the goal, and you can go ahead and put those all up we were talking about how we've got bullet points that come one at a time. So, but there's one more that you can put up there. So basically there's 4 things I think that I have found that all work together if you are attempting to try to improve your ability to manage your time. So maybe you're not, maybe you don't care, and maybe this isn't the right time for you. But my guess is you probably would be interested in thinking through, what could I do in my life to try to manage my time in a little bit better? So the goal today is, this is going to be kind of a lot coming at you, but my hope is that you will walk away with like one idea or one thing that you can go back to or Google search or be like, okay, that piece of what she was talking about resonated with me where I'm at right now. And that maybe you can take one piece of this and make some improvements. And so I'm going to talk about how to manage your time based on what it means to understand your energy and your values, setting goals and using a backward mapping strategy, making a schedule, which I think we all do, but using a really specific time management strategy called time blocking, and using a strategy on a weekly basis to revisit and revise your time management plan. So those are my 4 things I'm going to talk through today. And so we'll start by talking a little bit about this idea. And there's 3 bullet points. So The Science of When is a book by Daniel Pink, and it is blurry, and I apologize that, but it's The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing. So some of you might know this sort of intuitively, that there's certain times of the day that certain types of tasks feel better for you. And so this person, Daniel Pink, has actually put names to that. And there are larks, third birds, and owls. And essentially what this means is you kind of got the larks and the owls. That's obvious. There's this idea that there's morning people and evening people. But then there's also this group of people that I actually fall into that fit kind of a different energy pattern. And so what a sleep chronotype really just means, it's kind of a fancy word, but really it just means that there's certain types of day that certain types of tasks are easier or harder for you based on how you are made up, how you are constitutionally, like you tend to be a kind of person that's going to go to bed later at night. And this is like not during college. This might mean, I've had a lot of college students stay up late at night. But I also knew some college students back in the day who would get up really early every day. And, maybe if you do like to be active and work out, maybe you are the kind of person that wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So you kind of know, maybe when you think through it, like a little bit who you might be. But if you want to like dive into this more, I did put a link. I was going to say drop a link. I did put a link into the, sorry, now I'm distracted. I did put a link in here that you can go and you can take a quiz. We won't have time to do this today, but if talking about this concept of energy management is interesting to you, I would suggest you go to this website, take the quiz and look through the information that they send you about what it means to be a lark, a third bird, or an owl. And you can kind of switch to the next screen and I'll show you a little bit more about what it means. And so this is the sort of peak and trough and recovery that happens for somebody if they are the lark or the early bird. So that means that the beginning of the day in the morning, you're going to have a real big peak of time. And then in the afternoon, you're going to have a trough time where you kind of have less energy. And then towards the evening hours, you actually sort of rebound and have more energy later in the day. And so I think that maybe we all kind of notice that shift. But the interesting thing to me in thinking about time management is being intentional about the types of tasks that we do in each one of these times of day. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how this works out for me after I talk through the next section. But generally speaking, the recommendation for an early bird, for example, would be to work on your analytic and focused work when you've got the most energy in the morning. In the afternoon, doing more of your routine work. This says administrative, and if you're a college student, maybe a different word would resonate with you, like maybe you're kind of sending emails back to people or text messaging people or setting up a group meeting if you're in a student club or something like that. You're doing sort of more rote work. And in the evening is kind of when the creative work comes for someone who would be a lark. So I feel like when I first learned about this concept, I dove straight in and learned as much as I could about I'm not a lark, I'm a third bird. And that means that my energy shifts a little bit later in the day. So instead of being, really energetic right away in the morning, I am more like, 11 to 2. And then I have a trough like 2 to 4. And then my creative time comes more like 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock p.m. So again, I will talk through that a little bit more, but this is definitely the first idea when I want you guys to think about what does it mean to manage your energy. And then the next piece I want us to think through is, you can go to the next screen, is about your values. And so how are values related to time management? So there's 3 bullet points here that you can put up onto the screen. And really, this maybe seems straightforward, but I think that when you're really intentional about it, especially kind of on a seasonal or a semester or yearly basis, to think through, who am I right now? What matters the most to me right now? And how am I going to use those values to then influence the choices I make about how I spend my time? So, knowing what is most valuable to you gives you direction in your life. And so then that energy that we just talked about, that we kind of breaks down on a day-to-day basis, should also be oriented maybe on a semester and yearly basis towards those things that reflect the values that are most important to you. And so we're going to take a little bit of time to examine your values, which will in turn hopefully help you think a little bit more about how that might influence your time management decisions. I, like Carly, am a mom. I'm a new mom, actually. I have a 3-month-old baby. I have an older son as well and a family. I've got a job. I've got family that I want to see. I just finished a graduate program. So I've got a lot going on in my life as well. I'm going to, again, give you an example of how all this plays out in my life. But first, I want to actually do an activity that is more passive, but I would like to make sure everybody, does get engaged in this. We are going to discuss this in a small group activity after my section is over. So please make sure that you engage in this activity, but we're not going to talk about it at this very moment in time. I want to give you a chance to reflect through this. So this activity is going to take about 8 or 9 minutes, which is going to seem like a long time, but I'm going to give you space to actually think. And we're going to, it's just a values-based activity. When I was in college, and I know that I did this in student groups and things like that. So I know maybe you've done this before, but the most important thing to me at this point in life is really just reflecting to you that it is okay to do this on a regular basis to sort of assess what's most important to you. Because like I said, before I was mom, different things were important to me. Way back when I was in college, different things were important to me. So in terms of, again, time management, setting your values, thinking about what matters to you is going to lay really good groundwork for you as you're thinking through how to build a good schedule. So what I want you to do is actually, I'm going to give you 2 full minutes to look at this list. And the first thing I want you to do is really easy. I just want you to read through the columns, and I want you to pick words. But I want you to, I know somebody's in transit, so this might be harder for you to do, but those of you who are sitting at a desk, or if you have a phone, mine's over here, but I know that we encourage you to keep your phones down, but this would be a good use of picking it up and actually just writing into a notes document, like what words resonate with you. But if you do have a pen and paper, please leave your phone to the side. So that's really it. Just go ahead and look at these lists and write down the words that resonate with you. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do just that. And I'm going to set a timer so I don't shortchange you. We have about a minute left, so don't cut yourself short here. Make sure you're looking at the whole list. Okay. Well, that was 2 minutes. So if you didn't get a chance to look through the whole list, that's okay. But the next thing I want you to do is we're going to take another 2 minutes to look through this. But this time I want you to look at the list of the ones that you felt like resonated with you and kind of try to group them a little bit. Or if you don't feel like you can group them, to try to pick the 3 to 5 of the ones you chose that feel like they most represent you right now. So if you think you can group things together, you might see words like service, probably making a difference, and community. You might have those 3 together. Those kind of feel like a similar theme. And you might think that really the value that resonates with you the most is making a difference. And if there's no right or wrong answer, this is just an exercise to help you hone in on your values, hone in on what's mattering to you right now. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to either kind of group similar things together and choose a word that represents that group, or simply to just kind of go through the list that you wrote down and pick the 3 to 5 values that feel like they most resonate with you at this current moment in your life. So I'm going to give you another 2 minutes to do that. So have about 45 seconds. Okay. All right. So I think it's really fun to think through values and what matters to you. Is anyone willing, before we move on to the very final stage with this, is anyone willing to share what a few of their values are at this moment in time?
I can share.
Awesome. Go ahead.
So some of mine are well-being, generosity, inspiration, mindfulness, and family.
Do any of those feel like they've changed for you recently in for any particular reason?
I've kind of like had this like intuition for a while, honestly. I don't really think that many of them has changed. Maybe like generosity and service has been a more of a focal point, something that I've been valuing more because I'm in the role that I'm in.
Awesome.
So
Great. Can I have one more person brave enough to share?
Sure, I can.
Thank you.
I kind of lump like curiosity and knowledge together, enthusiasm, inclusion, and then making a difference.
Awesome. I'll ask you the same question. Does anything feel newer to you in your value system, or have you been hanging on to those values for a while?
I've been hanging on to those for a while. Yeah, I don't think anything's changed recently.
Yeah, great. And that's totally okay. And I also just want to emphasize it's also okay for our values to change over time as well. So we can oh, good point, Anya. People can share their values in the chat. We're going to hang on to this activity for a little longer, so I appreciate Anya's suggestion. If you want to just toss yours into the chat, feel free. You can move forward to the next slide, because the final piece of this is to take your values and to make them actionable. Achievement. I'm not surprised that we have an AmeriCorps member who has achievement as a value. I love it. So these are mine right now. And, you know, I am a perfectionist. And so I wanted all of them to be my values because they're all good. They all seem good to me. But right now in my life, I will say things have kind of shifted a little bit for me, kind of moving out. I finally finished my PhD, my dissertation work at the end of last year. I am now a mom to 2 boys. I'm sort of moving into a new stage in my life. And so maybe that's far off for most of you, but it's just to say that things are changing for me. So I wanted to share mine a little bit. So when I think about my life, you know, values right now for me are things like living in freedom, free from debt, free, you know, for example. And that's something that's been really important to my family, and, you know, and being able to make a difference, being mindful, thinking about my own well-being. And then happiness for me has not always been a value that I've held very closely, but I think I've been more serious as a person. But now that I have 2 young sons, it's important to me to be bringing happiness into their life because they bring happiness into mine. And so I want to just sort of be cognizant and present with that. So hopefully me giving you a little bit of an example shows you how it's totally okay that things can shift. But what I want you to do here in the next, I'll give you a minute this time, is to try to do what I have done with these values. The values here are freedom, making a difference, mindfulness, well-being, and happiness. And so that you might actually, just like you would in your resume, think about a verb to add to your value to make it actionable. It's a little bit of a challenge, so maybe you might just think about one of your values, but I've put them as an example here to see if any of these verbs resonate with you. But it just kind of brings them to life a little bit more rather than just being the word freedom. For me, when I say live in freedom, or I want to seek opportunities to make a difference, I want to act with mindfulness. That one for me really resonates because it's not just about my own mindfulness, but to be mindful in a way that influences other people, promoting well-being and multiplying happiness, which I also described a little bit before about what that means for me. So I'm going to, again, I've got 5 here. That's overwhelming. We're going to just move through it quickly, but maybe if you can just pick one of your values and try to add a verb to it that makes it feel actionable. I'm going to give you a minute to to think through that, because with this, for me, I really hope that you can take these away from this training and write them down somewhere that you're going to see a lot, so that you can center yourself on some of these values as you move through your days and weeks this semester. All right, I'll give you a minute to try to make your value actionable. And you can steal my words if you want to, it's fine. We're doing this together as a community. Okay. All right, so I promised you that I would give you a little bit of an example of why this all matters and why we're talking about all this energy and values and all this stuff as it relates to time management, okay? But for my life, which is different than your life, because I'm in a different stage than probably most of you. But when I think about my energy levels as a third bird, and I think about these values that you see in front of me, I think about the way that I structure a day, right? You can think about the way that you structure an hour, a week or a month or something like that as well. But I've broken it down into how I structure a day. So because I don't have a ton of energy, like really early in the morning, I'm not doing a lot of hard work. So I'm going to get up and I'm going to check my emails. I'm going to set my schedule and I'm going to see if anything's changed. And I'm just going to kind of like check in on things. And then actually what I've started to do is I take a step back and I do my mindful movement. I do have some control over my schedule, and you may not always be able to do things at ideal times, but it is the most ideal for me to actually take a break before I get rolling into my day. And I usually do some sort of either a long or short yoga practice, because that's a practice that's really important to me. And it's important to me to get it done in the morning, because it energizes me and it takes advantage of some of that like shifting energy towards like the most focused part of my day. And so then right after that, in the later morning, is when I'm like ready to go for kind of more analytical decision-making tasks. So I set up myself to go back to my plan for the day, and I just get the stuff done that's really easy to get done, because that's the best time of the day for me to do it. And then in the early afternoon, I tend to, well, I like to schedule meetings with folks. I like to do like less analytical things in that time in the early afternoon, because I lose a little bit of energy to do really focused work, but I can still be present. And then honestly, it's towards the end of the day and the later evening that I have my most creative time. But I have to take a break after work until my kids go to bed, because it's very important to me that we structure and schedule really fun stuff. So we've been this week, because the sun's going down earlier, we've been like planning and packing picnics and then heading to the park so that we can get outside before the sun goes down. You might do the same with your friends, right? Like you may block a time in your day that is like sacred time, where you're planning time to go have fun or something. And then actually at the end of the day, after my kids go to bed, I have recently decided to start doing, which is like my creative energy time when I'm thinking about my plans for my life. I'm actually doing yoga studies at night from about like, honestly, like 10 to 11:30 at night, even though I do have kids and I should be sleeping. My brain is just active at that time. So instead of wishing myself into, I should be sleeping right now, I do sleep until about 7:30 in the morning. So I'm not missing out on sleep. Let's just be clear on that. But I am engaging in something that is not my regular work. It's something that I'm passionate about. It's something that I want to learn more about in my life. It's related to well-being, and it really brings me a lot of like creative fun energy. So that's just an example of how I set up my day And I hope that if you're already kind of doing some of this, that doing this values activity and thinking about your energy peaks and troughs during the day will just be extra information for you to be like, oh yeah, I'm already kind of naturally doing this, and there's names for it, and there's resources for me to kind of go learn more about it and, you know, incorporate that more into my day. Okay, so now we're going to get more into the like less heady stuff and more of the practical stuff when it comes down to time management. So you can move forward into the next slide. And it is about making goals specific and concrete. So we've all heard about SMART goals probably at this point. I use a slightly modified goal setting sort of plan, which is I call SAD. It's called specific, achievable, and time bound. And I'm not going to get too hung up on this because I think a lot of us do this, or for our classes, a lot of our professors or faculty members have done this for us. And I like to kind of match it with this idea of backwards mapping. I'm not actually sure at this point how many people naturally backwards map, but I am going to talk about it as it's relating to setting goals, because I think it helps get to more specific tasks that we have to do in our day-to-day life, which helps us with my next step of time management. So we all have these big goals that we want to try to accomplish, or a lot of even within our coursework or with our AmeriCorps positions, we've got goals people set for us, and oftentimes, you know, there's smaller tasks that lead to the bigger goal. Sometimes though, we've got big goals and we have to come up with those tasks. And so I use backwards mapping to help me figure out the smaller pieces of a project based on when I want to be done with it. And so again, easy concept, but what I like for the last chapter of my dissertation that had to be 30 pages and I had to write it in 3 months. I had to look at what it was, and I ended up actually making sure that I took time at the beginning of project to think, what is this going to require of me? And how am I going to get to this goal of having a 30-page chapter 6 done in 3 months? And so really what I did is I broke the chapter down into the section titles that I was going to have, and then the section titles into the paragraphs that were going to need to be written. And then I thought about how long is it going to take me to write one paragraph. You could even, you could do this for a much shorter paper. You could do this for a 5-page paper, or a semester term paper that's closer to 10 pages. And you probably already do. But if you get to the very, very specific thing, I got to the point where I kind of knew what the topics were for a paragraph. And I knew that I could probably write a paragraph in, I'm kind of a slow writer, like 1 hour, right? Like, and I was really trying to be intentional about it. Then I knew that I had to find an hour on my calendar. And I kind of was also like, okay, it's going to take this many hours. That means I had this many weeks. I had to find an hour on my calendar to actually slot that very specific task into. Okay. That's the concept of backwards mapping. Pretty straightforward. The thing I hope, like, we can move to the next slide. The thing I want us to talk a little bit more about is the idea of actually making that time visible. So once you've backward mapped your tasks and you know what they are, this is a strategy by Cal Newport. And I actually think I'm going to skip the video because it's like 3 minutes long. Well, the video is longer, but the first 3 minutes really dive into what this time blocking thing is. And really, essentially what it is that he's another guy who's basically says that if you follow a time blocking, time management strategy, that you can save yourself up to 20 hours a week just by identifying the time in your day and what it is that you need to do during that time. But I really think it's important that you spend some time backwards mapping on the tasks that you do first, and that you don't just write on your schedule, study. Because if you just write on your schedule, study, the chances you'll pull out your phone and procrastinate, like me. I'm saying this about me, not just anybody else. Like when I was, writing, or I had to do anything, or even work, if I don't have a specific task to work on during that time, it will be so much harder for me to stay focused. So the connection between the two things is that you will have something specific to put in your calendar. And so this whole concept is basically just that you want to, take a week of your life and make, or the month, and make, use a repeating calendar, or if it works better for you to write it down with your hands into a paper calendar. You want to block all of your important set time obligations, making sure that you put in your work times and your class times, your exam due dates and your project due dates. And then basically you want to use kind of that concept of energy that we talked about before, and your values, to set blocks of time that are certain things, right? So setting the time that's like, I am just going to work on this class right now. But then the magic happens when you've also done the backwards mapping. And then in that time block, you can say, this is the specific task. This is the chapter I'm going to read. This is the paragraph I'm going to write. And then the best thing, I think, for me, is in a world where we're constantly having to make decisions, where we've constantly got stuff from the internet flying at us, where we're exhausted by social media. It feels on the front end that something this specific could be really exhausting, but I promise you that if you set it up like this, especially in a time of life where you're busy, go all the time, what it does is it releases you from a lot of decision making about what am I supposed to be doing right now. It can be challenging because it can be hard when you're getting used to sort of something like this to actually start making the decisions. But the best part about what to do, but the best part is that you'll get better with it over time. And you could do some sort of modified version of a time blocking system. But really, like having, and I think that probably all of us who are high achievers and go getters, that sort of thing, do some sort of a hybrid version of a time blocking system. But adding in some consistency, adding in those specific tasks, actually going to if you just Google search Cal Newport time blocking, there's YouTube videos that you can watch. You can learn even more about like his system. He wrote a book called Deep Work, and it's very sort of explicit about the fact that in such a distracting time of life, of society, I should say, but also time of life, we have to make sure that we're protecting times in our day for deep work. And so that is kind of the goal of his whole system, is that really it's not as much about the minutia of all of the little things that you do, as much as it is when you do that, you actually then open up time to have that creative work, to have that creative and like if you have to write a paper, or if you want to write a song, or if you want, like whatever it is that you want to do, that you get to, so that you're not just moving through life sort of distracted all the time. So and the other important thing is, when will you have consistent you time in your schedule? This allows you to make sure that you're like scheduling in and protecting the time of your day and the time of your week, maybe even if it's just once a week, where you are making sure to kind of unplug, download things, and be able to try to schedule in some rest. So if you're interested in this topic and you want to look into it more, definitely look up Cal Newport and time blocking, and dive in more if you want to. So we can go to the oh no, we don't want to watch this video. You can throw up all the bullet points here. I think that there's, and this is just my plea to you, that the last thing that you do is evaluate and revisit your plan. So on a weekly basis, I would love for you to I do it on Fridays at the end of my work week. You might want to do it on Sunday afternoons or Saturday or something, but to take these questions and write them down somewhere. If you do this a couple times, it'll become normal for you. but I want you to think very hard about setting some time aside in your schedule to evaluate and revisit your plan. But really that just means reflect on what you're doing with your time management. All right. So how are you actually using your time? Like, be honest with yourself, right? Like, this has to, social media, internet use, this has to come into play. How much are you watching YouTube? How much are you watching Netflix? That kind of stuff. Versus how much you're doing things that are actually moving you towards your values. And that's where the values piece comes in really important, because you can get honest with yourself about how are these things I'm spending my time on moving me toward what my values are. What were you able to do? What didn't get done? Was your energy level appropriate? So are you doing things kind of in the right time of the day? Are you sleeping enough? Those sorts of things. What changes need to be made to your schedule? What are your persistent time wasters? Maybe they're not the things that I just mentioned, and maybe it is like too much social time, or maybe it's playing games too much or whatever. And then I'm going to throw this little AmeriCorps bullet point, which is, are you on track with your hours? Which we're going to talk a little bit more with Carly. But how are your hours for AmeriCorps going? Those kinds of things that you can reflect, adjust, and leave the past in the past, and move forward with whatever needs to happen kind of in the next fresh week. So that would be my challenge to you. And don't be afraid, just like your values, don't be afraid to change your schedule if it's not working for you. So that you can kind of throw the review up on the screen, but that's kind of my long and short of some things that have really helped to understand my energy, my values, helped me with my time management, is to understand my energy and my values, to know myself better, to backwards map after I've set myself goals, to take those specific little items that I know that I need to do based on getting to my goals after I've backwards mapped, and really get specific. And I've totally leaned into the time blocking thing, and I'm telling you, it's really helped me. So take a look at that stuff if this is something that you want to get better at. And then I do reflect on a weekly basis to try to improve what I'm doing. And then what you can do is you can relax and enjoy all the extra time you have in your life, which may or may not be true right now. But at the very least, maybe you'll have a little bit more space to kind of feel a little bit better about that. Like kind of having a plan and knowing what you're doing and how you're going to find time to do the things, so that you don't get to the end of a semester and think, where did all my time go? I didn't even get to do anything I actually wanted to do or anything that mattered to me. Because regardless of your age or stage, that's not a great way to live life. So I hope that something has been a little helpful to you in that. We're going to move into small group conversation, which I don't know. Do we want to break out, or do we want to stay a big group?
I think we had to have a couple of people had to jump off the call. So I think we could stay in a large group since we've got a smaller group now.
Okay. So we just basically want to, I don't know, give it a little opportunity to learn a little bit more about you, but also reflect on that exercise. So is there a value that you have that you did from the activity that actually you think influences how you manage your time?
I'll just go. Thoughtfulness for me.
Can you say more about why you think that influences your time management?
For especially like with the freshman group that we're in charge of over here, or I'm in charge of, I have office hours for them to come down and ask help for homework or ask help for scheduling. And during that time, I'm also doing my homework and showing them like what an upper class type style of homework can look like, and or what not it could look like, what internship what that can look like, and how to record hours for internship, and just mainly showing them how to enjoy college life through their freshman year.
I love that. That's good. Thanks for sharing. I'm going to skip over the second question for now, but I'm going to go to the third one, which is somebody willing to share something that maybe it's related to time management, maybe it's not, but just to kind of check in on things that you feel like you want to improve, either personally or professionally through your AmeriCorps term.
I'll just go again because just keep the awkwardness from going. What's one thing you want to improve, or hope you want to improve? Honestly, scheduling a little bit better because like for me, I get called the old guy over here. So like I'm in bed like 9:30, 10 o'clock, but I wake up like at 4:45, 5 o'clock. So just managing my time a little bit more during my free time and during my help with the freshmen.
Sounds like you might be a lark hunter.
Yeah. I'm a very, very early bird. And then
I
hate
don't
staying up at night.
understand that life at all, but I do know that that's very real for people. So you should go
Yeah.
check out that resource and see what they say about how larks can. I do think that larks are the ones who are supposed to be the most productive because that overall. So I guess you got that going for you.
Hopefully, because sometimes it's a little much. I mean, the only reason why I wake up early is because I go weightlifting in the morning, and then whenever I'm done with weightlifting, I check over my notes for homework, and then I go to class from 8 to 3:30. So yeah, and then internship right afterwards until like 9:30. So yeah,
That's
it's
a
fun.
busy day, Hunter.
Oh, it's a blast.
All right. Well, I just want to, I don't think that this is not the thing we want to spend the most time on today. I know that Carly's got a lot of ground to cover, so I'm going to turn it over to her. And thanks for listening, y'all.
Yeah, thank you, Kayla. Well, hopefully you can find some ways to kind of implement that knowledge and information into your personal life and into your AmeriCorps term. We are going to kind of shift gears here now, still keeping in the same vein of time management and timekeeping, but really more so how it relates to your AmeriCorps term specifically. So some of the things that I'm about to go over will sound familiar to you. They'll cover some of the things that we talked about in your orientation when we talked about timekeeping, but I think they're important reminders. And so let's go to our next slide. And we will change this next time so that not all of our bullets come up one by one. But one of the most important pieces to being successful is knowing what's expected of you, right? So every AmeriCorps member is required or expected to complete a minimum number of hours before their term end date. And AmeriCorps members should be aware of that minimum number of hours based on their position type. So at one point, I think we had all 3 position types on the call, but full-time members are expected or required to finish 1,700 hours. Minimum time members are expected to complete 300 hours, and abbreviated time members are expected to complete 100 hours. So it's always good for you to keep in mind what's the goal at mind, right? And knowing how many hours that you're expected to complete. You will remember probably from orientation, but we do recommend serving more than the minimum required minimum hours, just in the unlikely event that hours are disallowed or a mistake is found on a timesheet. So our recommendations are somewhere around like 5 to 10 additional hours for abbreviated time members, somewhere around 10 to 15 hours for minimum time members, and 20 to 30 for full-time members. It is essential to know the minimum number of hours per week. And also noting the difference between hours per week and the hours per timesheet, because the hours per timesheet should be doubled, right? So we had some confusion about that last year. So I just wanted to bring that to light. And then Hours will vary based on term type and length. So that's different for everyone across the board. And then the minimum number of overall hours and the minimum number of hours per week or hours per timesheet are listed in your member service agreement and in your position description, as well as in your AmeriCorps account. So if you're looking for that information, right, those are the 3 places you can go to find them. Okay. So a little bit more about timekeeping and AmeriCorps. Whoop, went one too far. Okay. Okay. So members are responsible for submitting accurate timesheets in a timely manner, right? And that means bi-weekly. We do have reminders set up in AmeriCorps, automatic reminders. So there shouldn't be any excuses as to why your timesheets are not being submitted in a timely manner. You'll get automatic reminders to submit your timesheet the day of, the day after, and 1 week after. And then you'll also get hounded by us if we see your timesheet pending to be submitted. Members cannot log their hours before they were actually served. We covered this in orientation too, but it's a really important point to bring up. So preloading hours, and these are all just like kind of common themes or issues that we see each year. So I always like to highlight these. So members that are logged in a timesheet before they're actually served, that's considered pre-loading hours, and it is also considered falsifying an official government document, which sounds scary, but essentially those are hours that you have not served yet. And so if Volunteer Iowa sees that, they'll reach out to us to notify you to remove those hours. So no preloading hours. And then time should be logged in 15-minute increments. So we shouldn't see any wonky decimals in there. And then at least 1 training hour is required by every member. There are several trainings offered throughout your term of service, but one very easy one to count is your orientation, or this one today if you're attending. But another important thing to note is that training should not exceed 20% of your overall time commitment. So I kind of map that out for each position type. For a full-time member, that means no more than 340 hours. For a minimum time member, no more than 60 training hours. And for an abbreviated time member, no more than 20 hours. Okay. I maybe skipped over. Okay. So this is just did my breakout groups show? Because I did have a question on here for breakout groups, but I think it maybe skipped over that. But this is just kind of we have a lot of members that reach out to us at some point in their term of service as they're looking at their hours in AmeriCorps, sort of in a panic saying, you know, I thought that I had 150 hours, but in AmeriCorps, it's only showing 120. And that's because the hours that you submit in your timesheet are only added to your total completed hours once your timesheet has been approved by your supervisor. So if you submit your timesheet and your supervisor has not officially approved it yet, those hours will not show up in your AmeriCorps account. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. There are limitations to your hours. So Volunteer Iowa keeps a very close eye on member timesheets, as do we as staff. And one of the biggest red flags is when a member strays outside of what is listed in the position description, as far as total hours submitted in the timesheet compared to what's outlined in the position description. So the hours logged in AmeriCorps should align with the service schedule and with the hours per week or hours per timesheet. outlined in the position description. So again, every member has access to their MSA and their position description. And it's also available to you in your Encore account. So this example below shows a real life position description for one of our members this year. The important information is blacked out, but I highlighted the most important areas to look at. If you haven't really dissected this yet, I encourage you to go to visit your position description so that you are aware. Every member should really be aware of what their start and end dates are. So that's listed in your position description, as well as the description of anticipated service schedule. So this one says the member will complete service hours between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Honestly, we like these to be a little bit more specific, but this serves its purpose. And then also the member should expect to serve 10 hours per week or 20 hours per timesheet to complete their term of service successfully. So that's where your term type and your hours per week or hours per timesheet are listed. Okay. So limitations to hours continued. Okay. So there are some limitations on the number of hours a member can serve or log in their timesheets. Exceeding these limitations is always flagged by Volunteer Iowa, which requires our program staff to follow up with members for either a detailed explanation of why they exceeded the limitations, or oftentimes we see we need to open a timesheet and remove hours. So just keep that in mind as you're logging your hours in your timesheet. Members should not exceed 12 hours per day, 60 hours per week, or 200 hours per month. And that would be like a lot of hours. So like not even healthy. And then the other one that we covered earlier was 20% of overall hours on training. And then members should not use the fundraising column in Encore, really specifically unless that a fundraising activity has been approved by your supervisor and added to your position description, because we don't have any members in our program right now who are doing any type of fundraising. And there are limitations to the amount of hours that members can do fundraising to. And then hours should be logged as either direct service or training. And most members, I think, know that at this point, and they have some experience in Encore. So to give you an example, we did have some new members on our call, but I think they've maybe left. So I think most of you on the call now are pretty familiar with on the Encore system and where you should be logging your hours. But I think we have seen some confusion this year with the difference between direct service and training hours. So direct service is defined as activities generally, the activities generally refer to those that provide a direct measurable benefit to an individual, a group, or a community. Direct service activities are outlined in each member position description under position/site specific member activities. So this is something that's sort of different to member service agreements this year. We have two different sections, one that's very site specific and then one that's program specific that sort of speaks more to the trainings. So members should be very familiar with what activities are listed on their position description. And that example is listed here below. Okay. So then the difference then, so training is any personal, professional, and civic development activities. That's what should be listed in your training column. So I think there's maybe been some confusion about like, if you're giving a member a training, so you're training your mentee on, the financial aid services on their campus, that would not be considered a training. That would be considered direct service. So some examples on how it would relate to your service specifically is the AmeriCorps orientation, that's training. The Civic Action Academy, that will also, all of those hours will be considered training hours. And then any position specific training that your host site supervisor offers to you on how best to implement your role. So an example would be like mentoring 101. Life After AmeriCorps, which is a training that AmeriCorps members get at the end of their service, would also count as training, and today's training. And then anything else that's listed on the member position description under program related service activities. So again, this was a new piece to member service agreements that Volunteer Iowa wanted us to clarify in position descriptions this year, which I think is good because then you know what's expected of you in terms of training. So, all righty. So just an example of how that looks then in your timesheet. I just took a snippet here. So most of your hours, right, are logged under training or right here under direct service. And then one other thing that I wanted to highlight, and I highlighted it on this timesheet here, and maybe you've already seen this, but another new thing this year is that AmeriCorps members are not allowed to serve on federal holidays, which is good because I think AmeriCorps members should take a rest on federal holidays. But we should not see any hours logged on federal holidays. We highly discouraged it last year, but it was still allowed. We just had to follow up with members to get a detailed description of what they were doing on the federal holiday or why their service was needed. But Encore has added a function where it just enables us to block a holiday. So members are not even allowed, or the functionality is just not there for members to add hours on a federal holiday. So that's a really great feature that you should see in there. Okay. Okay, this was supposed to show up earlier, and I think it's because I was moving the slides around as Kayla was talking. So this might seem a little out of place now. And I was gonna do like breakout groups, but since we only have a few members left on the call, I think we could just talk about it as a large group. But I just wanted to do like a little scenario type of breakout. So Sally forgot to log 2 hours of service on a day that she was not regularly scheduled to serve. So it was not outlined in her position description. She has submitted her timesheet to her supervisor for approval. So I will just challenge you with this question. You can speak up, you can raise your hand, or you can drop it in the chat, whatever you're comfortable with. Are the 2 hours of service allowable? If not, why? And if so, what should Sally do next? So maybe just take like 30 seconds to think through that. And then if somebody wants to unmute themselves and share, that would be wonderful. All right, do we feel like we know the answer to this? Maybe. Does anyone want to unmute themselves?
I'm gonna say no, they're not allowed.
I agree. I was thinking no too.
Okay, good. My question was tricky enough then. No, that's actually false. So while we do encourage you to stick to your service schedule, we know that there's going to be service done outside of the service schedule, right? So Sally did forget to log 2 hours of service that she was not regularly scheduled for. She can still count those hours. I have a full description here that I can read, but so again, members should try to stick to the service schedule that's outlined in their position description. However, hours served outside of the typical service schedule or outside of what is listed in the position description are allowable. So the service schedule should serve as sort of like a general guideline, and should also be used as a strategy to be consistent with your service. Members and supervisors should be tracking and verifying hours outside of AmeriCorps. So for instance, using a paper timesheet, and I'm hopeful that most members do use that. And then supervisors should be aware of the activities and schedule that the member is serving on a weekly basis, and should verify those hours or service activities before the timesheet is submitted in AmeriCorps. However, hours can still be miscounted or just missed altogether. And so if you discover an error with your timesheet, reach out to your supervisor right away. If the timesheet hasn't been approved by the supervisor yet, they can return it. So they can kick it back to you for correction. Now, if the timesheet has been approved by the supervisor, corrections should still be made to maintain an accurate record. But in this case, the member and supervisor should notify our program staff. So reach out to either Anya or I, so that we can contact Volunteer Iowa to open the AmeriCorps timesheet for correction. Unfortunately, we do not have those privileges to just open a member timesheet. We have to reach out to Volunteer Iowa for that. So corrections should be made in a timely manner, and they should be resubmitted to the supervisor as soon as possible. So I'm glad that we went back to that question there. Good. Okay. I know we're getting really close to time here, so okay, a little bit more about schedule and hours planning. Okay, so creating an effective and execution plan at the beginning of your service is important, right? And that's why this training is pretty timely. Understanding and tracking the status of your hours will help keep you on track to finish hours and exit successfully with your education award. So keep that end goal in mind. And then the most effective way to put your plan in place and execute your hours is to use resources to put it into practice. So you may be asking, what are these resources and where are they? Well, we have them available to you. And I'm happy to take you through this. I was hoping to have some time at the end of the training for folks to take some time to use the resources to do some planning. But I think, we'll send you the slides to our training so you can look through them and reference them, and maybe do some planning outside of the training. So I'll just kind of take you through the resources right now, just to kind of give you an idea of how they work and how you can best utilize them. So this was a tool that we put together as sort of a corrective action plan for members who were behind schedule, but it's really a great resource that members should plan to use again at the beginning of their term. So this might be something that we should add to orientation, honestly. But you'll see at the bottom that there is a tab for full-time members, half-time members, minimum time members, and abbreviated time members. So I'm going to, just for example purposes, I'm going to open the minimum time tab. And what you can do is you can put in your start date. So as long as you have access to, you should know your start date, but you can put your start date in here and it will populate the total number of weeks And it will tell you when the start of the week is and when the end of the week is. And then the anticipated total hours is what you'll put in here. So whatever your hours per week is, that goal should go right here. At the bottom of the tool, then you'll see, once you plan out all of your hours, and you can use this green column as a guide too, based on how long your term is. So you might need to adjust how many weeks of service that you're in. But you can adjust those hours here, and then you'll see that it calculates the total at the bottom there, the total number of anticipated hours. So these are hours that you're planning to serve each week. And then we break it down here in the next two columns. So the anticipated direct service that you plan and the anticipated training. So some of these trainings are preloaded by myself based on when members had orientation. So I did put in a start date here of 8/21/23 because we had a lot of members start on that day. So in this case, if you're filling it all out, just for example purposes, you would put you would plan to serve 8 direct service hours because you know you have 2 hours of training that day. You can also use this holiday column to sort of anticipate and plan around any holidays or breaks that your campus might have. So I kind of blocked winter break off on this schedule as just sort of a, you'll know during this time that you won't be serving as many hours, right? Because chances are you may not be on campus, or a lot of our members do leave to go home over winter break.
Also,
so you can, yep, go ahead.
It's 4. I just wanted to let you know. How many sites do we have left?
How many sites do we have left?
Slides. I'm just asking because it's 4, and I just want to
be yes.
Members.
Yep, I realize that. I think I'll just, for the sake of the recording, I'm going to go through the rest of this one here. Yep. Thank you. Yep. So, as you adjust your hours in this column here, it will total them up at the bottom right here. And then you can adjust, based off of holidays and breaks that the campus takes. The other tools that we have are the AmeriCorps milestone template. And I do have the links available in the slides. And so you can find them there. They are viewable, but they're not editable. And that's just so that we don't have members coming in and changing the content or putting their hours in our template. So you'll just simply download the template and you can fill in your hours there. And so this one is a little bit more simple. You can choose your slot type here. So if I'm a 300-hour member, I'll put in my term length in weeks, and I've added a calculator here to the bottom. So your term length in weeks is listed on your member service agreement. So you can access it there, or you can put in your start and end date using that link there. So once you know your term length in weeks, you can put that in here, and there's a drop down menu that you can choose, and then you'll put in your start date. And what it's going to do is it's just going to break down the number of hours that you should have completed by what date on a quarterly basis. So this first column here is the first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter. So if I'm a 300-hour member serving 25 weeks and my start date is 8/21, I need to serve 75 hours by 10/3/2023. So this is just another way to keep yourself accountable and sort of a time check, right? So the last one that we have available is in AmeriCorps. They just rolled out a benchmark tool that's available to members. Unfortunately, I logged into my member account today, and the benchmark tool is not working right now, but this might be something that I could record and send out to members later on. I think it will serve as a great resource to members, and it's also easily accessible because you already have an account in AmeriCorps. But one thing I did want to show you really quickly before we end the training. I'm going to log into my dummy account. Oop. And you may have already discovered this. But there is a really nice there's a really nice breakdown in here. Right here where there's this plus button. So if you go to time tracking and enter timesheets, if you click on this green plus button, it's going to give you this beautiful breakdown here, where it tells you the details of your hours. This is going to tell you the average hours per week target, and that's what's set out at the beginning of your term. It's going to tell you the average of hours per week that you're currently serving. It's going to tell you the number of weeks that you have left, and then based on the number of weeks that you have left and your current hours per week that you're serving, it's going to adjust the number of average hours per week needed. So that's highlighted here. So you can see that this is elevated by just a little bit because in this example, I haven't submitted a timesheet yet. So it's showing up for me as that I'm slightly behind. So awesome. I know we are definitely at time now. And so I think we could, do you want to stop the recording, Anya?